Welcome to Life Stories, where we share real, heartfelt journeys that explore the power of love, resilience, and the bonds that shape our lives. Today, we have a story about a woman who faced an unimaginable betrayal on the most important day of her life, her wedding day. When her family chose a vacation over being there for her, she had to learn painful lessons about what it truly means to be loved and supported. Join us as we dive into this powerful story of self-discovery and the strength to rebuild from the ashes. Subscribe to our channel to begin today's story. The morning of my wedding should have been the happiest day of my life. Instead, I found myself standing alone in the bridal room, surrounded by the beauty of St. Mary's Church, but feeling a gnawing emptiness inside. The soft April sunlight filtered through the stained glass windows, casting colorful patterns across the stone floor. But no amount of beauty could ease the growing panic I felt. Everything was supposed to be perfect. I had always imagined this moment, the moment when I would walk down the aisle, with my family and friends gathered around me, watching as I pledged my love to the man I had chosen. My father, my mother, my sister, those were the people who had raised me, loved me, and supported me, or so I had thought. But today, as I looked at my reflection in the mirror, I couldn't help but wonder, where were they? As the minutes ticked by, my anxiety grew. I had been told my mother would arrive early to take photos, something she had been planning for weeks. After all, she had built an entire brand around social media, her spa visits, her endless quest for likes, the meticulously curated life she wanted the world to see. My father, ever the businessman, had always placed his reputation above everything else, including me. My sister, Kendall, was no different. She had built her own empire, not through hard work or dedication, but through the art of carefully crafted selfies and sponsored posts. It was a world I had long struggled to understand, but one I had accepted because they were my family. But now, there was no sign of them. My phone remained eerily silent. And it wasn't until I began receiving messages from friends and relatives asking why the Wilsons weren't present that the truth began to sink in. Something was wrong, very wrong. It wasn't until the wedding planner, Sarah, entered the room with her checklist that the knot in my stomach tightened even further. She looked around the room, her eyes darting between me and the empty chairs that were meant to be filled with family. "Where's your family?" she asked gently, her voice almost a whisper. That was when I received the call. It was from my mother. "Mom, are you almost at the church?" I asked, trying to sound calm despite the tremble in my voice. "Oh, honey, I'm in Florida right now, on a beach in Miami," my mother said cheerfully, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "I thought it would be more fun to take a family vacation for Sophie's spring break than attend your wedding." For a moment, the words didn't register. I stared at the screen of my phone, unable to comprehend what she was saying. It felt like a bad joke, something too ridiculous to be true. "This is my wedding day, Mom," I said, my voice shaking. "Oh, right. Today's the day. I thought Hawaii would be a lot more fun." "Sorry, honey. The beach chair is so comfortable here. I'll send you some pictures of the resort later." I stood there in stunned silence, my breath coming in short gasps. I could feel my hands shaking as the phone slipped from my grip and fell to the floor with a dull thud. At that moment, I was struck by a powerful wave of conflicting emotions. Anger, yes. Betrayal, of course. But also relief. In that one devastating conversation, everything I had been struggling to ignore for years came rushing to the surface. My family, the people who were supposed to be there for me, who I had looked up to and trusted, had chosen something as trivial as a vacation over one of the most important days of my life. They had made it clear that their carefully curated social media lives mattered more than their presence at my wedding. And in that moment, I realized that I had been blind to their true priorities all along. I wasn't sure whether to cry or scream. I stood there, motionless, while Maria, the makeup artist, continued to work on my face, her hands no longer steady as she applied the finishing touches. Linda, my longtime friend, gently adjusted the lace veil that I had spent months picking out. glancing outside the window at the cherry blossoms as if they could somehow offer me some comfort. But no amount of beauty could mask the truth that had just been revealed. For a moment, I didn't know what to do. My mind was racing, my heart aching, and my entire sense of self was falling apart. But then, just when I thought I couldn't bear it any longer, the door opened. It was Brielle Anderson, a family friend who had been a constant presence in my life for as long as I could remember. Brielle was more than just a businesswoman. She was someone who had always shown me the love and support my own family never had. She stepped into the room with a calm determination in her eyes, carrying an iPad in her hands. I saw the posts on social media. Brielle said quietly, "Your family is in Florida, aren't they?" Her voice was steady, but there was a fire in her eyes that I hadn't seen before. She was angry on my behalf, and yet there was a warmth in her that made me feel safe. Brielle didn't ask questions. She didn't need to. She just knew. "Let me be your family today," Brielle said, her voice soft but resolute. "Let me stand by you when they won't." And in that moment, something inside me shifted. I had always believed that family meant blood ties, that love was something you inherited. But today, Brielle showed me a different truth, a truth I had never understood until that very moment. Family wasn't about who you were born to. It was about who chose to stand by you when everything else fell apart. Together, Brielle and I stepped outside the bridal room. As we walked toward the altar, I could feel the weight of what had just happened settling in. But I also felt something else, a sense of strength, of new beginnings. And I knew, in that moment, that no matter what my blood family had done, I had found something even more important, a chosen family. One built on love, empathy, and genuine connection. And that, I realized, was all I needed. The room was filled with an uneasy stillness as we walked toward the altar. Brielle's presence beside me offered a comfort I had never expected to find today. Despite the absence of my biological family, I suddenly felt more connected to Brielle than I had ever felt to my own relatives. It wasn't just the warmth she offered, nor was it her calm strength in the face of my anguish. It was the fact that she was choosing to stand by me in a way my own family had never truly done. As we reached the altar, I couldn't help but glance around the room. At the guests who had arrived to celebrate with me. They had come to support me, not just because it was a wedding, but because they cared about me. In that moment, I realized that family wasn't simply about names or bloodlines. It was about the people who show up when it matters. The people who hold you close and offer you their love, without hesitation. And there, at the altar, in front of all the guests, I felt an overwhelming sense of gratitude. Brielle, as always, was a rock. She seemed to have an innate ability to know just what to do. And as I stood next to her, I could feel her calming influence settle over me. Without saying a word, she handed me her iPad. "Look at the screen," she said. I blinked, still trying to process everything that had happened. My phone was still in my hand, and I could feel the sting of betrayal all over again. But Brielle's calm demeanor had a soothing effect on me, and I took a deep breath before glancing at the iPad. There, in front of me, was a post from my family, my mother, my father, and Kendall, laughing, carefree, on a beach in Florida. Their smiles seemed so fake, so forced, as if they had no idea what they had just done. The posts, of course, were meant to show off their perfect vacation, their perfect life, their perfect smiles. But now, in this moment, they only served to highlight the emptiness of what I had felt for so long, an emptiness that had always been there. Just below the surface, I turned to Brielle, my heart sinking. "They don't even care, do they?" I whispered, more to myself than to her. Brielle's response was simple, but it hit me harder than I could have imagined. "No, they don't. But you don't need them. You have us. You have me. And we will stand by you. No matter what." Her words, so calm and steady, struck me deeply. It wasn't just her presence that I needed in that moment. It was her belief in me. Her unwavering support. Brielle wasn't just a family friend. She had become the true family I never knew I needed. In the days and weeks that followed, The realization of what had happened began to sink in. My father's business, Wilson Properties, which had been such a significant part of my life, was now facing the consequences of his choices. His obsession with appearances and social status had cost him everything: his reputation, his business, and now, the family he had once valued so deeply. But as much as I wanted to be angry at him, I knew deep down that this wasn't just about money. It was about love, the lack of it, and the way his obsession with wealth had clouded everything that truly mattered. Meanwhile, Brielle had become a cornerstone of my life in a way I hadn't expected. She was there for me, not just in the grand moments, but in the quiet moments. When I needed someone to listen, she had made me realize that family wasn't defined by who you were born to, but by who chooses to love you, support you, and stand by you through thick and thin. We began to share moments together, laughing over dinner, attending church services, and even spending quiet afternoons in the garden at Brielle's house. With each passing day, I felt my heart healing, my soul growing stronger. What I had once thought of as my real family had let me down. But Brielle, her unwavering love, and the group of friends and family who had embraced me gave me something far more valuable: true connection. They gave me a new definition of what family meant. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, Brielle insisted on taking photos of me, not for social media or for any external validation, but simply to capture the beauty of the moment, the love, the peace, and the new sense of belonging I felt. "This," she said, as she snapped a picture, "is for you, for your story, for the love we're building." And for the first time in my life, I understood what she meant. This wasn't just about a wedding. It was about creating a life built on genuine relationships, free from the superficial ties that had always defined my family. As I looked at the photos later, I saw not just a bride, but a woman who had found her strength, her voice, and the love that truly mattered. The day of the ceremony arrived, and as I walked down the aisle, I felt a profound sense of calm. It wasn't the chaos of the wedding preparations or the absence of my family that filled my heart. It was the knowledge that I was not alone. I was surrounded by people who truly cared, who had chosen to walk with me, not because they had to, but because they wanted to. And that was when I realized, family isn't about who's missing. It's about who's there, standing beside you, when it matters most. Brielle's love and support had given me the strength to move forward. And with her by my side, I knew that no matter what happened, I was never truly alone. The day of my wedding was supposed to be a celebration, a culmination of years of planning, love, and excitement, but instead, it became the turning point in a story I had never imagined for myself. As the ceremony continued and I stood before the altar, I couldn't help but reflect on the shocking events of the morning, the betrayal of my family and the way it had torn apart everything I had once believed about them. But amidst the pain, I felt an overwhelming sense of clarity. I had found a new family, one rooted in love, empathy, and support, and that family, though different from the one I had been born into, had become my true foundation. After the wedding, the ripples of my family's absence spread quickly. In the weeks that followed, I watched as the consequences of their actions began to unfold. My father, Blaine Westbrook, who had spent decades building Wilson Properties, now found himself at the center of a storm he had never seen coming. His business was his pride and joy, his reputation, his legacy, but it had all crumbled so quickly, as if the foundation had been eroded overnight. Wilson Properties, once a pillar of the real estate industry, began to suffer significant losses. The contracts my father had worked so hard to secure with key clients, including Brielle Anderson, who owned Anderson Mall, were now in jeopardy. Brielle, who had been a close family friend for years, had been one of the first to distance herself from my father after the wedding incident. When she posted her message of support for me, it was clear that she had no intention of continuing any professional relationship with him. Brielle's business acumen was respected across the region, and when she pulled her contracts from Wilson Properties, others quickly followed suit. Blaine's obsession with appearances has cost him everything, a business partner whispered to my husband. Jasper, as they sat together at a local cafe a few weeks after the wedding. We can't trust a manager who doesn't even know how to prioritize family. It stung to hear, but at the same time, I couldn't help but feel a sense of relief. My father's downfall wasn't just the result of a single moment of foolishness. It was the culmination of years of neglecting the people who mattered most in pursuit of superficial goals. The very foundation of his success had been built on social media likes, status symbols, and appearances, and now, that fragile foundation had shattered. I thought about my mother, Meredith Westbrook, who had always been the epitome of social grace and poise. But even her image began to unravel in the wake of the wedding. She had always placed so much value on maintaining the perfect public persona. But that persona quickly became a liability. Her Instagram account, which had once garnered thousands of followers, was now flooded with negative comments and backlash. The photo she had posted from the wedding, showing her lounging in a beach chair in Florida, became a symbol of her neglectful, self-absorbed nature. Within days, her account was frozen, her follower count plummeted, and the friendships she had spent years cultivating vanished in the blink of an eye. It was devastating to watch. But at the same time, I couldn't help but feel that my mother was finally facing the consequences of her choices. She had never truly understood the importance of family. She had placed her worth in the number of likes on her posts, in the number of followers she had accumulated, and in the carefully crafted image of perfection that she had projected. But in the end, that image had crumbled under the weight of her own neglect. And then there was Kendall, my sister, the one who had always been closest to me, the one who had once shared my dreams. She, too, had spent years building a career based on her social media following. And her income as a financial director at Wilson Properties had been just as reliant on appearances as my father's business. But now, Kendall was facing a very different reality. Within days, she lost her position at the company and was forced to take a part-time job at a small cafe. It was the kind of work she had once looked down on. But now it was the only option left for her. Her once thriving online presence shriveled as her followers abandoned her in droves. She had become the face of betrayal, and her carefully crafted world had crumbled. As for me, I began to realize that while my family had been torn apart, I had been given a unique opportunity. With the support of Brielle, Jasper, and my newfound family, I was able to build a life that was grounded in something far more meaningful than status or wealth. I had learned, through pain and hardship, that true family is built on love, trust, and shared experiences, not on social media posts or curated images of perfection. The weeks that followed were filled with healing. As my life with Jasper, Brielle, and the rest of my chosen family grew stronger, Brielle had shown me that real love is not about expectations or superficial bonds. It's about standing by someone when the world feels like it's falling apart. And as I looked forward to the future, I couldn't help but feel a deep sense of gratitude. My wedding day, which had begun as a nightmare, had ended as a turning point. A moment where I had learned to redefine what it meant to be loved, to be supported, and to be truly family. As the days turned into weeks and weeks into months, I watched the world around me shift in ways I never expected. My family, my blood family, had fallen apart. But in its place, I had found something far more meaningful, a new kind of family. One that was built on love, trust, and the kind of bonds that can never be broken by shallow appearances or fleeting moments of status. With Jasper by my side, and Brielle as a constant source of strength and guidance, I knew I was finally where I was meant to be. The lessons I had learned from the painful betrayal were invaluable. True family isn't about who you're born to. It's about the people who choose to stand by you when everything else falls away. It's about love that doesn't need to be earned through social media likes or carefully curated lives. Real love, I've discovered, is messy, imperfect, and deeply authentic. It's the love that carries you through the darkest moments and lifts you higher when you're ready to give up. I no longer felt the weight of my past weighing me down. I had the power to create a future that was filled with the people who mattered, with those who genuinely cared. And as I looked around at the family I had created, Jasper, Brielle, my closest friends, I realized that I was finally free to live the life I had always dreamed of. Thank you for following my journey. If you want to hear more life stories that explore the power of love, resilience, and new beginnings, be sure to subscribe to our channel. Stay tuned for more videos, where we share lessons learned and experiences that remind us that true family is built from the heart.